Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, not long ago, he set his career high in points. He scored 45. And this is a player who the prior 2 seasons averaged 30. Before that, he was a 25-point per game scorer. And this season, he's averaging 28. So 45 is kind of surprising. You might think with a guy like him who is such a high-level scorer on a night-by-night basis, you might think it's a 50, or even with the way things are going, a 60-point game. But no, it's 45. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the antithesis of so many modern NBA point guards. But he's been successful in doing so. And as a result of that, he has truly become an example for future point guards to look to. Really become the model of consistency in a league that so often that is not the case. The point guard position especially can be very, very volatile. This is someone who's going to have the ball in their hands a lot, be asked to do a lot, especially on the offensive end. And so they can fall into multiple traps. Inconsistency on a night-by-night basis, inefficiency, and a lack of effort on the defensive end. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been a shining example against all of that and become a true winning player in his own right, going against these seemingly norms at this point at the point guard position. First off, I'll talk about that defense. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the better defenders at the point guard position in the entire NBA. And this is while being required to carry quite a big offensive workload. He's the primary scorer and facilitator on that team. And yet with his physical tools, with his good wingspan and his height, he's able to go out there and still be a positive defender. And that's something that so often you don't see at the point guard position. And that stops them from going to the next level and becoming an all-time great, a proper elite point guard, because they just don't have what it takes on the defensive end. And regardless of what they do on offense, unless you're an elite offensive player, not just on ball, but off ball too, a guy like Steph Curry, for example, you're not necessarily able to get away with that defense being lackluster. And Steph in his own right was on a good defensive team. Ultimately, that wasn't necessarily because of him, but he wasn't the worst defender either. So he can honestly be a good comparison. Although him and Shai's offensive games are quite different. But ultimately, putting in effort on that defensive end can take you to the next level at the point guard position when so often you don't see it. And he's not Drew Holiday. He's not even Marcus Smart. He's nowhere near the best perimeter defender in the entire league, but he doesn't need to be. With his offensive production, he just needs to be even a neutral defender. And he goes above and beyond and is a good defender. So for him to do that is bucking so many trends of the modern NBA point guard. Think of just great offensive engines. Luka Doncic, Damian Lillard, to a lesser extent, a little bit, D'Angelo Russell. These are guys who are really good offensive players, but ultimately their lackluster defense can kind of take away some of that impact. Dame has gone his whole career now without winning a championship, of course, as he's caught much criticism for. And ultimately the Milwaukee Bucks have got off to a really disappointing start. Luka Doncic can often be attacked on the defensive end. And D'Angelo Russell is really struggling to find a home. So these are great offensive talents who were unable to become proper, impactful, truly impactful championship caliber point guards, winning finals point guards, because they were not able to translate much effort to the defensive end, despite any tools that they may have. But Shai has not done that. He's been a good defender. And he doesn't even necessarily need to be that good defender, but he is. So he's gone above and beyond being a neutral and being a positive on the offensive end. He has been even more than that. He has been positives on both ends of the floor, making him one of the most valuable, impactful point guards in the entire league. Next thing is his efficiency. And that largely comes down to the way that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander gets his points. Now, there are critics of his offensive game, calling him a free throw merchant quite frequently. But at the end of the day, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he does put a lot of points up, and he doesn't always have to take the most shots. As a result of the fouls that he does get, and being a good free throw shooter, he's able to go in and get your team 2 points, and it doesn't even count as a field goal attempt. But even beyond that, he is consistently a 50% from the field kind of guy, and that's something that so often is lost at the point guard position. Because typically they're taking all these perimeter shots, SGA is quite adept at getting to the rim, especially for a point guard. And as a result, he doesn't falter with his efficiency. It's often top of the league at his position because he takes smart shots. He is good at drawing fouls for sure and elite at getting to the rim. And that play style makes him really, really efficient from the field. And that's always a positive because ultimately a player, they can score 30 a night, but if they're doing that on 30 shot attempts a game, that's not really going to contribute much to winning because then you're having this guy take all your shots and not hitting that many of them when you consider the fact that not all those are going to be twos. If they were all twos, that'd be 50% from the field. But he's going to be taking some threes. He's going to have some free throws in there. So it becomes a guy whose amount of points are not that impactful when you consider the amount of shot attempts he's taking. But Shai is not that. He's consistently really efficient, really good to get into the line. He's been a really efficient scorer for this team and a high-level scorer at that. And that goes into the last point here about his consistency. Once again, the point guard position can be very volatile. D'Lo is just another guy to bring up here. D'Angelo Russell, he often gets off to really bad starts of the NBA season. Ultimately, he might round it out at the end. Then he gets to the playoffs and he's inconsistent. He's dropping 21 night, having a bad game the next. And since you never know what you're going to get from him, it's hard to game plan around that because you don't know if you want to give him too much responsibility and he can't execute, or if he's having a good night and you didn't give him enough responsibility. But SGA, you consistently know what you're getting. There was a running joke last year that he always scores 31 because every time you look at the back score, it looks like Shai scored 31 each every night for the Thunder. No more, no less. And a guy like D'Lo, at least when he was really having his best years as a net and as a Golden State Warrior, he might score 50. But at the end of the day, if he gives you 11 the next game, it evens out. And he can shoot you in some games, he can take you out of some. But SGA is going to consistently keep you in and shoot you into games. You can trust on him to get you a solid 28 to 30 a night. And you don't need much more because of what he does on the defensive end, because of his efficiency. And just because you can always game plan for Shai and the amount of points that he's going to get. And you can trust him to execute. And that is what sets him apart. That is why his career high is only 45. It didn't need to be any higher. Because everything he does for his team, from his consistency to his efficiency to his defense, it has been the antithesis of modern NBA point guard. But it really needs to be a shining example for future point guards. Because he has been a winning player in doing so. And been the leader for this young Oklahoma City Thunder team, who have already exceeded so many expectations. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should become the model and should become the bar for future NBA point guards and what they should really strive to do. Now, it's not easy to replicate what Shai's doing, and I don't mean to say that in the slightest, because Shai is the top player in the league. But in terms of how he does it, really ethically, is how I would put it, and maybe not the ethical scoring, because that's typically when someone doesn't take a lot of free throws, but in terms of everything he does it really ethically as a point guard. He's not very volatile whatsoever. And as a result, he's become a super impactful, super winning player for the Oklahoma City Thunder and been a great leader for them. And he's going against so many of the standards of the modern NBA point guard and been so successful in doing so. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is really the model for the future point guard that they should all look to. The consistency is key.